Speaking into identity, because we all kind of tend to wrap in a lot of our habits, like this is who I am and this is what I do. How important is it for you to talk about yourself in a different light in terms of like self-affirmation or just the way that you just talk about like the things that you do that will then lead to better habits?
I think that self-talk is really important. It probably isn't discussed enough. Even there's plenty of mindset stuff out there, but even still, I don't know that I think people are often their own bottleneck. There are, in most areas of life, there might not be like 1,000 ways to do something, but there's usually more than one way. And it's almost always the case that you stop yourself before the world actually gives you like a hard stop. It's so rare in life that you come up against something and it's like, hey, sorry, you can't be persistent anymore. There's nothing else to do. There's nobody else you could talk to. There's no small step you could take. You're out of options. It's just very rare to actually hit like a true brick wall like that. There's almost always some additional step you could take or something else you could try, some new line of attack. And so people often stop themselves before the world actually stops you. I came across this interesting exercise this one time. I can't remember where I heard it, but the basic idea is you get out 2 sheets of paper, and on the first sheet, the only rule of this game is that whatever you write down has to be true. So it has to be like factually accurate or correct. On the first sheet, you're going to pick whatever time frame you want. Let's say the last year of your life or the last 10 years of your life, whatever. Let's say the last 10 years for this. You're going to write down on this one sheet of paper the least favorable story of the last 10 years of your life. But everything you write down has to be true. On the other sheet of paper, you're going to write down the most favorable story of the last 10 years of your life. Now, if you're looking at those 2 pieces of paper, there are no lies. Like everything on here is correct. But man, how often do we tell ourselves a less favorable story? How often is the version that we're focusing on, the things that we're directing our attention toward, not the most empowering or most useful or most practical version of what's happening? And I like, questions like, assuming that I am going to deal with the reality of the situation, not ignoring the truth of the situation or what must be done, what is the most useful and empowering version of the facts that I can tell myself? And I just can't I don't see what telling yourself a different story gets you. If you're not ignoring reality, I think focusing on the most empowering or most useful version of the facts is almost always going to be the best option. So that form of self-talk, there are many ways to think about it. There are many ways to think about the story that we tell ourselves. But if you can do that, if you can focus on the most favorable or empowering or useful version of the facts, then I think you're in a better position to take action. I think you're in a better position to achieve the things that you're hoping to achieve. So it certainly plays an important role in the habits that we're building. And people with that kind of mindset, I think they're less likely to be their own bottleneck. They're less likely to tell themselves no. That's something I try to remind myself of consistently. I don't always do a good job of it, but I try as best I can to not tell myself no. I try to make the world tell me no first. Those are all just different ways of kind of thinking about that same problem.
That would be such an interesting survey to do with people. I wonder how many people actually would even fail at coming up with the positive story. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that if you asked that exercise, like tell people, like give me that's the story that in the last 10 years that's positive finds you. I bet you quickly people would come up with something negative.
Because that's the one they always tell themselves.
Right. Do you know how often that is, or is there research around that? I think that'd be really.
I haven't seen any research or any studies on that, like that little what do we want to call that exercise? But I agree with you. I think what you would find is probably people on both sides are biased to the story that they tell themselves consistently. Mm-hmm. So the people who think negatively are biased toward, they would be able to come up with the least favorable version very quickly because their mind is just kind of stuck in that rut. And then the people who live kind of like, some people might even call them overly positive or overly optimistic or whatever, they would probably be able to easily come up with the favorable story, and they might have to think for a little bit to come up with the negative version. It also, I think, is just generally true. I've noticed this for myself. Atomic Habits comes out. and I get 1,000 positive comments on Twitter, and I just kind of read through them and don't think anything about it. And then you get one negative reply and you spend the whole afternoon thinking about it. And so for some reason, the negative experiences in life, they get like marked more heavily in our brains. They occupy more space. So perhaps for that reason, coming up with a negative story might be easier as well. But I do think you probably would see people biased towards one or the other. But that also, I think, is the value of the exercise, is forcing yourself to sit through it and come up with both versions and then realize there's a different story I could be telling myself here. Like there's a different way. They're kind of the most powerful choices are the things that we don't even realize we're choosing. You don't even realize that you're choosing to tell yourself this negative version every day. And how is that coloring or impacting your behavior? But once you become aware of it, then maybe there's something you can do to adjust. And the process of behavior change almost always starts with self-awareness. It's very hard to change it, at least consciously, or to design it if you're not aware of it. So some exercises like that can kind of help raise your level of awareness.
Oh, I think I can see that as a coach and trainer that we've been for so many years. I think that would be such a valuable exercise for me to do as a coach, just to see how my client would respond and go, oh, okay, I see what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with somebody who automatically is going to default probably to the negative story they tell themselves versus the positive. And so that would give me a lot of insight.